The average American in their late 50s has a net worth of about $1.5 million. On paper, that person made it. The hard part's over. Retirement's handled. Except most of them still can't afford to stop working. So what's actually going on with that $1.5 million? And what does it mean for your number? In this video, we're walking through the average wealth at every age, decade by decade, on the freshest data out there. But not the way everybody else does it. You're going to see 3 completely different versions of your wealth. And which one you look at flips the whole story. And by the end, I'll show you the one number that actually decides whether you get to retire. For the typical person heading into their 60s, it's smaller than the $1.5 million average we just saw, smaller than even the typical household. And it's the reason a paper millionaire can still come up short. Here's the problem. And to see it, you need one quick definition. Net worth is just everything you own minus everything you owe. Your house, your car, your savings, your 401k, all added up, minus any debt. Easy enough. But the way it usually gets measured across a whole country, the average is basically built to fool you. Let me show you how. Because once you see it, you'll never read a wealth headline the same way again. When you take everyone's net worth, stack it all up, and split it evenly by how many people there are, you get the average. Trouble is, a handful of ultra-rich households are sitting in that pile, and they yank the whole thing upward. Picture a room with 10 regular people in it. Then Elon Musk walks in. Suddenly, the average person in that room is worth a couple $1 billion, even though not one of these 10 people got $1 richer. That's exactly what happens with net worth across the country. The average comes out to about $1,063,700. But the typical household, the one sitting dead in the middle, is at $192,900. Same country, 2 completely different lives. So there's your first 2 numbers. The average, which makes everyone look richer than they really are, and the median, which is just the person in the dead middle. Half the country above them, half below. That second one is the truth. It's the one to watch. Now, one thing to know about these figures, they come from the Federal Reserve's Big Household Survey. And the most recent complete one is from 2022. So they're a few years old now. And since then, markets have been on a tear. In 2025 alone, the typical 401k saver earned around a 19% return, and home values kept climbing. So your real number today is probably higher than these charts show. Keep that in your back pocket. Now here's the third number, and this is the uncomfortable one. Look back at that typical household, $192,900. Sounds like real money. But most of it isn't money you can actually spend. For most people, the biggest thing they own is the house they live in. And you can't exactly sell the kitchen to cover groceries. Pull the house out, and what's left? The investable part. The cash and savings and retirement accounts you can actually reach. Comes to about $39,000. The house is real wealth. It's just wealth you can't touch without selling it and moving somewhere cheaper. So from here on out, keep 3 numbers in your head. The average, which flatters everyone, the median, which tells you the truth, and the investable piece, the only one that actually decides whether you retire. Line your own number up against those 3, and you'll know exactly where you stand. That's the lens. Now let's point it at your actual life. Because your number still doesn't sit still. It grows as you age, sure, but it also changes shape. And it starts somewhere that looks like almost nothing. Under 35, the typical household has a net worth of around $39,000. In a 401k on its own, the median balance for workers just getting started is about $18,732. And look, if you're watching this well past that stage, don't let those early numbers rattle you. This isn't a lecture about what you should have done 20 years ago. It's just so you can see the shape of the thing. Here's the shape. When you're young, your wealth is mostly cash. A checking account, maybe a 401k that just got rolling. Then somewhere in your 30s and 40s, if you buy a house, home equity takes over as the biggest single block of what you own. By the 35 to 44 crowd, the typical net worth climbs to about $135,600. But check the average for that same group. It comes in at $549,600, more than 4 times higher. The trick is already running, and these folks are barely into their 40s. Okay, we're a third of the way in, and you've already got something most people never pick up. You can read any wealth number 3 different ways now, and you can catch the exact same moment the average starts lying to you. Stick with me though, because the best part's still coming. I'm going to show you why so many people who like millionaires on paper still can't afford to retire, and the single choice right at the end of all this that decides how big your check is for the rest of your life. You only get to make it once. But right now, let's get to the decade where all of this stops being theory, your mid-40s. This is the fork in the road. By 45 to 54, the median net worth is $247,200. The average for that same group, $975,800. Now, the multiple there is about the same as it was for the 40-somethings, right around 4 times. But look at the actual dollars between those two numbers. For the 35 to 44 crowd, the gap was roughly $414,000. Here, it's over $728,000. Same lie, nearly twice the size. But something good happens to your wealth here too. Remember how the house was the biggest block for younger folks? Right around 45, that flips. For the first time, your investments and retirement accounts become the bigger piece. And that matters, because that's the kind of wealth you can actually spend. Now here's the part I really want you to sit with, especially if you feel behind. There are 2 ways to move your number, not one. You can save more, or you can knock out debt. And people forget that second one completely. Every dollar of mortgage or credit card you pay off lifts your net worth exactly the same as a good day in the market does. The difference is, this one you control. The market, you don't. At 50, you also unlock a real lever. It's called a catch-up contribution. Normally, the most you can put in a 401k in 2026 is $24,500. But once you hit 50, you can add in another $8,000 on top for $32,500 a year. There's a brand new twist for 2026 worth knowing too. If you earned more than $150,000 last year, that extra catch-up money has to go into a Roth account, which just means you pay the tax now instead of later. Most plans handle it for you. You just want to know it's happening. Now, I keep saying retirement accounts like they're all one thing. They're really not. And that Roth twist I just dropped on you is a hint at why. The gap between these accounts is worth serious money, and almost nobody ever gets taught it. Here's something tax code doesn't exactly advertise. It hands real money to the people who know a handful of rules, and most folks never learn them. So let's make you one of the people who does. Start here. Your retirement money isn't sitting in one place. It's spread across different types of accounts, and each type plays by its own rules about taxes. The simplest way to keep them straight is to sort them by one question. When does the government take its cut? Bucket 1 is tax deferred. They take it later. That's your regular 401k and traditional IRA, a 403b if you work for a school or a hospital. You get a tax break the year you put the money in, meaning that money comes off your income before the government works out what you owe. Put in $5,000, and the taxman acts like you earned $5,000 less that year. Then it grows untouched for decades, and you settle up when you pull it in retirement. Bucket 2, they take it out now. That's your Roth accounts. A Roth 401k, a Roth IRA. No break on the way in. You pay the tax this year out of this year's paycheck. But then it grows, and every dollar that comes out later is yours. All of it. 40 years of growth, untaxed. Bucket 3 is a regular brokerage account. Just an investing account you open yourself. No break going in, but no rules on the way out either. No cap on what you put in. No age gate. Pull it whenever you want. You'll owe tax when you sell at a profit, but usually at the capital gains rate, which for most people runs lower than the rate on your paycheck. And that flexibility is exactly why it's the account people lean on if they want to retire before 59 and a half. Real quick, so nobody gets confused, remember that 401k number I flagged earlier? Those 401k balances I keep showing you are one account. Just one. And in the IRAs and everything else, and the retirement pile gets bigger. Meanwhile, the net worth figures come from a totally separate survey, one that looks at whole households, two different measuring sticks on purpose. I just don't want you doing math in your head and thinking the numbers don't line up. Now here's something that genuinely surprised me. Look at IRA balances by the time people hit their 60s, and the traditional ones absolutely dwarf the Roth ones. And you'd figure that's because folks are pouring money in. Nope. In one recent year, about $682 billion rolled into IRAs from old workplace plans, while brand new contributions come to roughly $89 billion. So most of that big traditional balance isn't IRA saving at all. It's your old 401ks moving in every time you change jobs. Your IRA is basically your whole career, following you around. Now, those are the three buckets. But there's one account that doesn't fit in any of them, because it breaks the rule the buckets are built on. The HSA, Health Savings Account. And you'll only get one if you're on a high-deductible health plan, which just means a plan where you pay more out of pocket before the insurance kicks in. Check your benefits. A lot of people have one of these and never open the account. Here's why it breaks the system. Every other account picks a side. Tax break going in or tax-free coming out. Pick one. The HSA doesn't pick. You get the break on the way in, same as bucket one. The money comes off your income. It grows untouched. And it comes out tax-free for medical costs, never taxed. Not on either end. Nothing else in the tax code does that. In 2026, you can put in $4,400 as an individual or $8,750 for a family. And a crowd staring down a lifetime of healthcare bills in retirement, it's honestly a cheat code. One thing to get right though, because this part gets mangled constantly, that never taxed magic only holds for medical spending. After 65, you can spend it on anything you want without a penalty. But if it's not medical, you pay regular income tax on it, same as a traditional 401k. So after 65, it's still a good account. It's just a normal one. The cheat code is the medical part. Second, if you work for the government, or you're a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, listen up, because you might have a 457B. And the 457B does something no other retirement account does. You can pull money out penalty-free the second you leave your job, at any age. No waiting until 59 and a half. On top of that, its limit is separate from your other plans. So if you've got both a 403B and a 457B, you can load up $24,500 in each, which is $49,000 a year. One catch, and it's a big one, roll that 457B into an IRA and you lose the penalty-free access. So think hard before you ever do. All right, you know the numbers, you know the accounts. Now let's get to the decade all of this had been building towards. And the question that stops being, how much do I have, and turns into something a lot scarier. This is the peak. 55 to 64, the median worth hits $364,500. The average tops out over $1.5 million. In a 401k, the middle balance lands at $107,269. This is about as high these numbers get before retirement starts dragging them back down. There's one last lever before that happens though, and it's a good one. Between 60 and 63, 4 years, that's the whole window. Your catch-up gets bigger. Instead of the extra $8,000 you unlocked at 50, you can put in $11,250. And I want to be clear, because this trips people up, that's in place of the $8,000, not on top of it. It takes your total for the year to $35,750. Then you turn 64, and the window slams shut. Now, this is where we come back to that promise from the start. The typical 50-something shows $364,500 in net worth. Looks solid, right? except a big chunk of that is the house they're sleeping in tonight. Pull the house out, and the money they've actually got to retire on drops to around $185,000. Sit with those three numbers for a second. The average for this group, over 1.5 million. The typical household, 364,500. And the number that actually decides whether they ever get to stop working, $185,000. Smaller than both. That's the paper millionaire trap. Rich on the balance sheet, stuck at the day job. And I know how $185,000 lands. It doesn't sound like enough. So let me show you the math people actually use for this. It's called the 4% rule. The idea is simple. In your first year of retirement, you pull out 4% of your savings. Then every year after that, you bump the amount up a little to keep pace with rising prices. Why 4%? Because researchers went back and tested that number against decades of real history. Good markets, terrible markets, the crashes, all of it. And 4% was the level where most people's money lasted about 30 years without running dry. So treat it as a guardrail, a sane starting point that most retirement plans get built on. Run it on $185,000. 4% of that is $7,400 a year. Split it across 12 months and you get $617. $600 a month to live on. On its own, that's scary. But it was never meant to stand on its own. You also get Social Security. It's the government check you get in retirement, based on what you paid in across your working life. What makes it different from your savings is that it shows up whether the market had a great year or a horrible one. It doesn't care. Right now, it pays the average retiree about $2,071 a month. Call it $25,000 a year. Your savings don't have to replace your whole paycheck. They only have to close the gap between Social Security and what you actually spend. Say you need $50,000 a year to live on. Here's how most people run that number. All of it has to come from savings. So, 4% rule, you'd need 25 times that amount. $1.25 million. No wonder people feel hopeless and quit before they start. But that's not the real math. Social Security is already covering about $25,000 of that $50,000. So your average savings only have to produce the other half. $25,000 a year times 25 comes to $625,000. The typical household isn't there yet? No. But the real gap is a lot smaller and a whole lot more reachable than that giant average number ever made it feel. So that's your target. But hitting the number turns out to be only half the job. The other half, the half almost nobody bothers to teach, is getting the money running dry. At 65 and up, watch what happens. For the first time in this whole video, a number goes down. The middle 401k balance slips to $103,202, down from $107,269 the decade before. Now, be careful with that one, because three separate things are tangled up inside it. Some of it is exactly what it looks like. People spending their savings, which is the entire point of having savings. Some of it is that rollover thing from earlier, money walking out of the 401k and into an IRA, where this particular survey stops counting it. And some of it is just that the folks still sitting in a 401k at 72 aren't the same folks who were sitting in one at 58. So read it as a shape, not a scoreboard. Nobody in that number is failing. But the shape points at something real. For 40 or 50 years, your whole job was filling the bucket. Now you're drinking from it. And honestly, that's the harder skill of the two. Three things start to matter a lot here. First, the order you pull from your buckets. Two people can need the exact same income, live the exact same year, and walk away with completely different tax bills, purely based on which account they reached into first. The rough starting point most plans use is to spend the brokerage money early and let the Roth sit as long as possible, because the Roth is the one growing tax-free. That's a starting point, not a rule. But getting the order roughly right can be worth thousands a year, every year, for 30 years. Second, RMDs, required minimum distributions. Here's what that means. At a certain age, the government stops letting you leave that traditional money alone in there. They force you to pull a set amount every single year, whether you need it or not. It's the bill for decades of tax breaks finally coming due. And the age depends on the year you were born, which almost nobody knows. Born in 1959 or earlier, it's 73. Born in 1960 or later, which is most people watching this, it's 75. 2 extra years of that money growing untouched. Roth accounts skip the whole thing. Nobody's forcing anything out of a Roth, ever, which is one more reason people love them. Third, and this is one of the biggest money decisions of your entire life, when you claim Social Security. Quick bit of context. There's an age the government calls your full retirement age. For anyone born in 1960 or later, it's 67. Claim right at 67, you get 100% of what you earned. Claim early at 62, and you lock in about 70% of it. I mean, lock. Not for a couple of years, for the rest of your life. That's a $1,000 check dropping to $700. Go the other direction and it moves the other way. Every year you hold off past 67, the check climbs about 8%. Wait all the way to 70 and that same $1,000 becomes $1,240. Then it stops. There's no bonus for waiting past 70. Same work history, same person, same paycheck record, $700 or $1,240. One decision. And one last thing. Don't flip everything to cash the day you retire. Feels safe, but if you're 65 and you happen to live to 95, that money's still got 30 more years of growing to do. Safe and broke was never the goal. That $1.5 million at the top of this video was never really your number. But it can be. Click the video on the screen to find out how $50 a week into a Fidelity portfolio is projected to reach a $1.1 million valuation that pays over $6,000 per month.